Welcome to the 2023 Town of Lumberland Heritage Day. I am your historian, Frank Schwarz, and have served in that capacity for 38 years. I devised the virtual Heritage Days in the days of the COVID-19 pandemic for the public to learn and be educated about our rich heritage. Recently this year, I began a section about Lumberland heritage and architecture on my Facebook page, which is a public post. If for some reason you can't pull it up, send me a friend request and I will accept you. The following is definitely growing. This also was done as an encouragement for the public to visit the Town of Lumberland Museum Room in the historic Lumberland Town Hall, the former Glen Stay one-room schoolhouse that was built as a joint project with George Ross Mackenzie, founder of Glen Stay and also president of Singer's Manufacturing Company, along with William Fash Proctor in 1879. They built the building for the local school children. So originally I planned a slide presentation, but due to time constraints, I will do a lecture and then take you around the numerous tables and point out the certain pictures, photos that are all part of the Lumberland Museum Room. Now I will try to give you a little background. First, I want to tell you a little bit about Lumberland. It's a beautiful town in Sullivan County that borders the Orange County line. The main center is Glen Stay. The government offices are located at the Town Hall, and next door, the Thomas F. Hill Municipal Building and Senior Citizen Building. Surrounding the Town Hall is beautiful Circle Park. And across the street from Town Hall is our Lumberland Veterans Memorials. Just down from the memorials is the George Ross Mackenzie Elementary School, located on 12 acres, donated to the district by the Town of Lumberland. It's a wonderful place to live, to visit, with plenty of space, beautiful scenery, historic buildings, and nice people. Our museum room housed in the Lumberland Town Hall is a room dedicated to the education and preservation of our local heritage. It opened in 1992 and was dedicated at ceremonies with numerous local and county officials. Since that time, the local historian has been involved in numerous restoration projects, including the restoration of the Lumberland Steinway Grand Piano, our local history book unveiled at the Lumberland Bicentennial in 1998, and numerous histories which are in our resource room as part of the Lumberland Museum Room. Many of those grant projects were available through TAG grants through the Upper Delaware Council. So I've also worked very hard to assemble 28 historical markers around the town to depict the history. They are now being renewed and painted one by one, and the recent addition of the Upper Mongop Cemetery plaque, aka Knight, was just installed with another site just up the road, the Van Gorder Boarding House plaque, just recently repainted and refurbished. The Upper Mongop Cemetery plaque was made possible through the Pomeroy Foundation grant. The hamlets in Lumberland include Lower Mongop, Upper Mongop, Glen Stay, Hillside, and Pond Eddy. Lower Mongop's roots were in D&H Canal boat building, rooming houses, and dry goods stores. Further up Mongop, in Upper Mongop, off of County Route 31, we approach an area that had a Methodist church. A school was built in the early 1900s, numerous farms, and boarding houses. As we approach Glens Bay, formerly known as South Lebanon, that's where we are right now today, we see more houses. Used to be large tracts, farm tracts, the Shake Farm, Pine Terrace Farm, the O'Halloran Farm, the Ruddock Farm, and so on. As we enter the town center of Glens Bay, at the town center is the Lumberland Town Hall and Museum Room, the Thomas F. Hill Municipal Building, and the George Ross Mackenzie Elementary School. Also nearby on Hollow Road is the Homestead School. We are blessed with the Pondetta United Methodist Church and the Sacred Heart Church, St. Peter and Paul Ukrainian Orthodox Church, and St. Vladimir's Ukrainian Catholic Church. There is a substantial Ukrainian population in our town that began with the emergence of a Ukrainian center in the 1950s known as Verkhovina. Their purchase of the Mackenzie Ewing Estate, Bramble Bray, and Mackenzie Vanderbeek Estate, Ardmore, led to some wonderful years of Ukrainian festivals. The estate of James Mackenzie, known as Woldcroft, and Alec Mackenzie's estate, known as Windy Knoll, became the Pythian camp. And also I'd like to give you a little bit more background. Over the years, we were blessed with the Brookwood camp, and that was part of Brookwood Farms, which was originally the estate of William Fash Proctor. And there was Camp Diana on the White Road, and it's now known as Camp Maury's. And we also have Camp Laconda, which was also part of the land where they had the kennels for Mr. Proctor's estate, Brookwood Farms. And of course, we have Burton Bray Mansion, known for the paranormal. Another family Mackenzie mansion that has been restored, thanks to the hard work of Mike and Pat Fraser. The mansion of George Ross Mackenzie became known as the Glenacre Lodge, and Dr. Craig's mansion became part of the Bel Air Minsk. Both of these mansions have since been destroyed. The original Bel Air Mansion land was sold off to private owners, but a few of Edward Mackenzie's buildings remain in private ownership. In neighboring hillside, there was the schoolhouse, which is still preserved today. And today there are many residences and dwellings of numerous sizes. So here is a little of the past. I will go around now and focus with the camera, describing some of our unique architecture and people. I hope that you'll take time to visit the Lumberland Museum Room. We are open Monday from 9 till 3, and also by appointment. And now for the pictures. We're going to start at the table with a very recent addition to the museum room. It is a very large framed print picture of George Ross Mackenzie, signed by him, entitled Men of Mark. It is a library edition, number 6. This was recently donated by some of the Mackenzie family. Here you will see a picture of the original Singer Sewing Machine Manufacturing Company, and a picture of the Elizabethport factory of the Singer Manufacturing Company. Here is a very early map of the area. It came from a Jewett atlas, and it's a page of Highland and Lumberland history, and showing that little scale of land there with Pondetti. Next, we're going to actually show George Ross Mackenzie's family, all his children, at the homestead. And here is the homestead when it was enlarged by 1885. That's the building that I referred to that later became the Glenacre Lodge. Here is the boathouse that still remains on that silvery boat stream near the Glen Spey Corners, waiting to be restored. Hopefully it will be restored. And also here is the boathouse, also right near the road. We're hoping that it will be restored. Next, I thought it would be appropriate to show you a picture of a piece of furniture that was originally from George Ross Mackenzie's mansion. It's a very early piece of furniture, probably when they first moved here. And here's the area we know today as the Glen Spey Corners. It's coming actually from Pondetti up to the corners. And where you see the break in the fence would be what became Route 31. Actually, on your left-hand side, you would see the barns, and those barns were existent before George Ross Mackenzie came here, about in 1830. And just across the street was the original residence that went with that. Very often they did that. They would have the barns on opposing parts of the road. A very, very early link to the area was the Pondetti Railroad. Here is a picture of some of the Pondetti stations. That's the last Pondetti Railroad station that we know, the little one. And here would have been the real old one, back from the 1860s. Here's a very unique part of the Lumberland Museum room. That's the GSCC. That would be standing for the Glen Spey Country Club. Now, where would that be, you ask? The Glen Spey Country Club would be the land known as around Metok Lake, which would later become a Girl Scout camp. Okay, so here we go to one of George Ross Mackenzie's children's mansion. This was known as Thornley Bank. It later became known as part of the Bel Air Minsk. Here is a later version of the homestead. You had just seen a picture of the double mansion. This is the original homestead that was actually adapted upon the, how shall I say it? The youngest daughter inherited the house. So this is her version of the homestead, circa 1903. And some of the original furnishings of the homestead in one of the parlor tea rooms at the time George Ross Mackenzie was alive. And you can see some pictures of him up on the wall and some notoriety of Singer Sewing Machine Company. Here's actually an article from California Life. It's showing the youngest daughter, Jessie Ann Alexander, and her daughter-in-law, Lucy Clark. Lucy Clark also would have been within the, I believe, the company of the Clark Sewing Machine Company. Here is Bel Air Mansion. What a beautiful house. This is the house of Edward Easton Mackenzie, one of many children of George Ross Mackenzie. This is a recent gift to the Town of Lumberland Museum room. No longer exists in Glen Spey, unfortunately, but it was a mammoth place with huge rose gardens and it just incredible place. Here you're going to see actually Volcroft, the mansion of James Stone Mackenzie, And you're also going to see another piece of architecture still remaining in our town, known as Bel Air Lodge. Now, this would be the gatehouse for this very large mansion known as Bel Air, which was completed in 1898. And here was a picture of Edward Easton's son's house. It was also, for a short time, known as the Glen Spey Post Office. And of course, here is our famous Burn Bray Mansion, now the home of Mike and Pat Frazee, known for the paranormal. Next, we're going to go to this aerial view coming up from Pond Eddy up the high road, and it shows many of the Mackenzie estates, the mansions, and the land. And here is Volcroft Mansion, the mansion of James Stone Mackenzie, and his tower and carriage house. The residence of Alexander Mackenzie. This is now part of the Homestead School, run by Peter and Marcia Comstock, who are relatives of the Mackenzie family. Entrance to Windy Knoll Farm. This was a grand estate. You'll see a picture of the actual truck there at Windy Knoll. And here was, of course, Alec Mackenzie's mansion, Windy Knoll. Only a portion of the right-hand corner of this picture of that building actually remains, which would have been the servants' wing. And there was a beautiful formal grove and park at the very end of that estate, which would have been located on Hollow Road. It's actually right near the Glen Spey Cemetery. And right near the cemetery was also a park, like a preserve, a nature preserve. And here is the old iron and wood tower that used to be up in the area, which is now known as the Black Forest. Here's Ardmore Mansion. Ardmore Mansion and Bramble Brae became part of Verkhovina in the 1950s, and Ardmore today is privately owned, where there are wedding receptions held at Mountain View Manor. Here is Bramble Brae, the home of Grace and John Ewing. It later was inherited by Mr. George Ewing, who was known throughout the country for his varied collecting of antiquities. Here's the Glen Spey Church that was built for the community by George Ross Mackenzie in 1884. This is a picture at harvest time. I'm not quite sure if this was at Easter time or at Christmas. Maybe it appears to me with the palms that it may be more towards Easter. They had a very active Glen Spey Sunday school there, and they would have little presentations at Christmas time there. My grandfather actually played the violin there for the ceremonies. Some of the accomplishments here at the Town Hall include the Town of Lumberland Cemetery brochure and the Town of Lumberland Historical Marker Site brochure. They're both available here at the Town Hall or the Thomas F. Hale Municipal Building. And this is where we're at now. I'm kind of showing, going down the as I call the pike, I'm showing where we're at the Glen Spey Schoolhouse. We restored the bell tower in 1997. However, we're currently in a project to completely restore it in 2024 with Sullivan County legislators' funding. Here is the front of the building in around 1900 with all the area school children. Again, early 20th century in front of the school. And you will note from looking at even the previous picture, there were a lot more trees. And the schoolhouse color was, the body of the building was a little bit deeper than it is now today, white with green trim. Here's the inside of the building, exactly where we are right today. They heated the entire building with coal and wood stove, and the pipes ran the whole length of the building. So on one side of the right-hand side of the room would be probably the coal stove, and the left-hand side would be the wood stove. Here's the Lumberland Town Hall in the early 1950s, perhaps maybe 1955, 56, when the addition, which is now the Lumberland Museum Room, was added. The addition includes what was known as the former boardroom and the kitchen. Here's the Upper Mongaup Schoolhouse. This was built about 1900 on the Knight Road. We're currently working to get a historic marker for the site, probably next year through the Pomeroy Foundation. And to conclude this one table is theatricals that were held in 1884. So many of you would ask, what would the area people do back then to amuse themselves? Well, of course, they were busy during the day with their farms and earning a living, but they would hold these theatricals, and this one was held at the Glen Spey Hall. Glen Spey Hall, this is a theatrical building of the Proctors, but I believe the Glen Spey Hall was actually the church that I showed you, because George Ross, that would be shortly after the church was actually built. But Mr. Proctor also had a theater building, and that's what I'm focusing on right now. Okay, so we're going to go across the room and look at the last table of pictures today. Now, here is a very massive stone building. It was a store, a hotel, circa 1840. Along the canal at Pondetty. This building faces the river as well. So again, part of the heritage, the D&H Canal. Now we're going to focus next on the Proctor Estate. This was known as Lacada Mansion, that was designed by Henry Janeway Hardenberg, the famous architect from New York City of the Hotel Manhattan, the Hotel Martinique, and the Waldorf Astoria. Here's the area which is known as Brookwood Farms, that later became Brookwood Camps. And here's the gatehouse for Lacada Mansion, currently under an excellent state of preservation. Now, here is a map that was so graciously donated to the town, and I thought I would use it in the Heritage Day presentation today. It's a map that was done by Horace Twitchell in 1907, and it's been graciously donated and framed. It's a gift of Philip Zuckerman from Eldred, New York, and it was submitted by Laura Burrell of Hewlin. Again, I believe we have one of the original maps or two of the original maps of Horace Twitchell. And those maps are also located in the Town of Lumberland courtroom. So, thank you to Mr. Zuckerman and Laura Burrell. Okay, many of you would say, well, what would the area people do years ago? This, I believe, is Mr. Manny, who was a builder of many of the fine buildings in our town, many of them still existing that have been restored, including the last store or rooming house of the canal, the D&H Canal, which was built in 1898. So I believe this is George Manny at his mill. And some of the area people, area residents, they used to have to cut ice for the ice houses to refrigerate perishable foods. So this is on the Homestead Pond, which is right near the center of Glen Spey. They were cutting ice. Now, I brought this picture out of the museum room on most of these pictures out and put them on the tables today for you. Here's a very beautiful oil painting that was done by George Sosnowski, who was a member of our art class here many years ago. And I asked him to do a oil painting of the Pondetti Bridge, which was recently taken out several years ago. So the old bridge is no longer there. Some of the early homesteads, I've been including this on my Facebook page, maybe not this particular one. This would have been from the Covert or Pickens side of the Bislin family. Probably in the area just before you get to the Bislin Agency. Again, pastimes of the years. Riding the motorcycle would be Mr. Nifty Conselman and Beatrice Covert Harris, who lived in Glen Spey throughout their lifetime. So there you have it. I hope you've enjoyed the pictures that we've had today, a little bit of the background. I would invite you to come to the museum room to see what we have, to ask questions. Again, we focused on a lot of big buildings, big mansions. We didn't really talk too much about the local town people, which of course made all of this possible because they worked at all of the estates. And today things are a little bit different. Everybody has their different line of work, but we still contribute to make a beautiful town of Lumberland. Have a great day and year ahead.